Like nowadays, if someone comes up to me and they're like, I don't know what my true purpose is, I just slap them across the head and I say, look, if you don't know what if you don't know what your true purpose is, your purpose is now the journey of actually discovering it.
Yeah.
Bros of Purpose podcast,
That's
episode 1.
Let's go.
Fuck it, let's get it. So I'm gonna just let you fire away, bro, because you're much better at asking questions than what I have. So.
No, it's a good place to start. It's purpose.
Yeah.
What does purpose mean? But also, I think the key point is, why is it so important? Because I know for both of us right now, it's important. It's big for both of us.
Yeah. I think purpose, and then I know this is like one of the things that we'll get into at some point and how it's a little bit overrated. I think the word itself is overrated as fuck because, you know, when someone like says, during a motivational speech, focus on your purpose, what's your purpose, find your purpose, they're basically using that word as almost like a buzzword, right?
Okay.
And what tends to happen is you put a lot of time, energy, and focus on that word. But that's also the reason why it's so hard to associate something meaningful to that word. Because once it becomes a buzzword, it's just
I think it
like
gets lost. It gets lost a lot. But I think that's because a lot of people haven't necessarily found their purpose.
Yeah.
I think that's why, and I think that's why it's such a good place for us to start, because you know me where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
I'm finding that purpose, and that's something I've just been building the last 6 months. That's the whole point of what we've been working with.
100%.
So I think it's not necessarily is it important, but it's how do you get to that point where you're even looking to sort of delve in personally and find what is your purpose.
100%. To be honest, it's like, well, if you were to say to somebody, what is your purpose? I think you have to understand what you're actually asking them, right? So if I was asking somebody, what is your purpose? What am I really asking them? I'm asking them what is important to you, so much so that you'd dedicate a huge portion of your life towards fulfilling that one thing. So that's what you're really asking somebody when you ask them what their purpose is. Because we're all wearing a mask.
Yeah, 100%.
Everybody's wearing a mask. But the mask that you're wearing, why are you wearing it and what's it actually leading to? When you delve into that, I think you start to realize what your true purpose is, but also what it's not.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because you're right, everyone has masks. Some people go through stage having multiple masks. You see that a lot in society. That's what keeps someone functioning, is having specific masks, specific parts of what they're doing, whether it's day to day, whether it's socializing to get over some form of anxiety, to compare themselves to others. So I think that serves a purpose, but I don't think that is purpose. Because I think purpose is when you actually remove those masks.
Yeah.
And you come and you're open to being your authentic self.
Yeah.
I think that's the key point. So how do you get to that point?
Yeah.
Because that's the challenge, I think.
100%. Well, as soon as you start asking yourself, what does that look like? So what is my authentic self? What is my true self? But you kind of like explore that without the mask. You see something beautiful or you see something very ugly.
Yeah, it's tough. That's the tough point. That's the toughest thing, is you're making yourself vulnerable. Yeah. Because you're not using your coping mechanisms, which are the masks. Yeah. So that's the tough thing for me, I've found anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But I think as well, like, if you know taking the mask off is going to lead to you seeing something positive or seeing something negative, it's like, well, is that not just a label that you're giving those behaviors? Because every behavior has positive intent behind it.
Yeah.
But
I think, yeah. I mean, I think with the labels, yes. But I think that's going to be part of the process. I think part of the process of removing those masks will be dealing with the labels that you've used for
Yeah.
periods of time, and then the labels of the parts of yourself that you don't really like.
Mm.
But that is part of the process, because I think if you're trying to find that purpose, you're trying to do something really uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
to get to, and you're probably at a plateau stage, and you're trying to go on a more upward trajectory. To do that, you have to go into uncomfortable areas, and there's going to be labels which you can't get away from. But how do you cope with that? How do you go through that process? Because I think that's why a lot of people don't last when they try and achieve something, when they try and go away from the norm, when they try and not stand out, but when they try and achieve maybe more than others around them. Why do so many fail at that and revert back to type?
I suppose you could maybe say, to find your true sense of purpose, you have to look at how you deal with discomfort.
Yeah.
Because if every time you feel uncomfortable, you run away,
Mm-hmm.
how would you ever discover your true self? How would you ever discover your most authentic self?
Mm-hmm.
So, but to really gain a sense of fulfillment from your true purpose, you would need to be, to some degree, in alignment with your true self and your most authentic self. But if every time you take that mask off, if every time you explore these things, you run away because of the discomfort, then whatever you discover, whatever you explore, isn't real. It's just a reflection of what you are willing to accept.
Yeah, 100%. But I think that's how majority of people go through their lives.
Yeah, 100%.
They create a comfortable perception of what their reality is, because being comfortable it's easier.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to remain uncomfortable and to progress, which will come naturally the longer you stay uncomfortable, as long as you surround yourself with the right people. It's not easy to do that. You have to be disciplined, and also you have to get really comfortable being uncomfortable, which isn't easy for anyone. But I think that goes pretty well into the next bit, which is, how does failure help in finding one's purpose? I mean, I know far too well that that's probably been the keystone to both of us, our friendship, and how we've sort of got to this point.
Well, when you think of failure, obviously you were saying earlier, like vulnerability in the role it could play and finding your true sense of purpose. When you fail, you are vulnerable because you're exposed to something that was, in most cases, unfavorable. Whether it's the result, the outcome, it's much less favorable. It's a much less favorable outcome or result. So then it's like, well, how do I deal with that? How do I respond to that? So you see those cheesy quotes that are like, oh, the way somebody responds to their situation and circumstances tells you more about their character. That kind of narrative.
See, I agree with that. I think it's how you respond to something, but I think that depends completely where you're at, because I think right now how I would respond to what could be seen as a failure would be completely different to how I would have responded to a failure 6 months ago. So I think perception on that is key, and it's how you perceive the failure, because the reality is failures are going to compound. They're going to grow. The successes will compound as well. Failures will always go alongside success. So I think when you're driving towards finding a purpose, whatever that might be, I think the key components of it is discipline, your perception of what you're trying to achieve and the reality of what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve more than 9 out of the 10 people that you're going to encounter that day, then you can expect probably some more failures from that. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. But I also think if you normalize failure, it becomes part of your paradigm. And the danger in that is, if you associate failure with your purpose.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like each time you fail at something, it's like, this is adding to my purpose. But it's like, is that really a positive thing? Like the association with failure and purpose? Because if you said, each time I win, I'm adding to my purpose, that doesn't solve everything. Because if you're like so deluded that the idea of winning is something that's actually like self-sabotaging, then you haven't actually solved anything.
Well, we were talking about that earlier. That's been part of the problem at times. Is how we manage success.
Yeah.
And I very rarely sit with my successes. I very rarely take that in. It's right, that's done, what's next? And from that, it sort of nullifies the actual the self-gratification you get from that success, and you're not really you're not giving yourself that recognition for where you're going. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. Taking the wins and focusing only on them.
Yeah. Maybe it's seeing the success in your failure. Because then you could maybe find a balance somewhere where you acknowledge the failure, but then you look for the lesson in that failure. Because then you're kind of like, you're somewhere in the middle. But I think defining your purpose is probably less about seeking something, but more about like just appreciating where you're at.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think, one of the biggest things I've craved for so long, and I found it in some parts of my life, but it's that contentment, and it's not settling. It's just being content with where I'm at, what I want to achieve, the process behind it. So, yeah, I agree. The purpose isn't necessarily striving for things consistently or constantly. It's understanding the process and also the value that you bring. That's fundamental to me, I think. And understanding your value, understanding your capabilities, and then putting a process in place for that. And that's fine. I think you don't have to be there now, but it's understanding that you can get there with the key components of discipline and managing your time with the right people.
And that's why I always say the most important thing you can do in life, if you want to find a true sense of purpose, is to execute against your fullest potential. Because once you decide what your potential looks like, it's very hard to go back from that, because you're like, okay, I believe my potential is X. And then you make that picture vivid. You visualize it, you embody it. By that point, it's gonna like go against the grain of every last fiber in your body to do some shit that's just totally misaligned with that picture.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think when you start to not understand what your purpose is, but understand that you have a purpose, you start to see, you perceive things differently, how you handle situations, whether it's how you react, the situations you put yourself in, the amount of time you spend in those situations, that starts to change.
Yeah.
You become...
Because it's all the bullshit that you go through that makes you lose that sense of inherent value that you have. The fact that you're alive says more about how valuable you are than your achievements. But actually believing that statement to be true is a very difficult thing if all you're doing is experiencing a whole load of bullshit that you can't really make sense of. And life's like that sometimes. Like you go through something and you can't make sense of it immediately. You can't make sense of it instantly. But the fact that you want to make sense of it straight away is like a very human desire. It's a very human thing to want to make sense of
instant gratification.
Yeah, it's a very human thing to want to make sense of your situation as it's happening in front of you. But sometimes you have to accept that you won't have all the answers. Sometimes you have to accept that you won't know and understand exactly why you went through what you went through. And being at peace with that is what actually allows you to kind of let go of the experience so that you can embrace other experiences that are to come.
Living life on life's terms.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most fundamental elements is what will be. And there's so many things out of our control that you could so easily, and I have in the past, so easily derail me from the direction I'm in immediately, in a split second. Whatever direction I was going with, that's done. Because I allowed things I couldn't control to affect me what I was doing, what I was trying to achieve. There was a lot of variables as to why I let them affect me, but that was where I was at the time. Whereas now, I get that contentment from living life on life's terms and accepting that that's how it is. There's so many things that I can't control. There's so many greater, bigger things going on that I can't dictate and I have no power over.
And I think that's where people like yourself, people like myself, being told a message of extreme ownership is invaluable because it basically gives us the kick up the arse to be like, look, whatever I've been through, let me just assume it's all on me. Let me just assume that it's all my fault and see where that takes me. So it's very useful to have that mentality and it's very beneficial to have that mentality, but it's a double-edged sword because sometimes all you need is a few words of encouragement.
Yeah, I mean, I still stand by that. I think fundamentally, accountability, everything, whatever happens, to some degree, it's your own fault.
Yeah,
there is things that happen in your life that you have no control over. But I think for me, if I have the mentality of, right, well, what could I have done differently in this situation? And whether there's something I could have done differently or not, it allows me to not waste time being concerned about someone else's actions and how they've affected me. It stops me getting into that self-pity phase and allows me to think, right, okay, that didn't go the way you want. What could you have done differently? How are you going to stop that happening next time?
See, I think the only way to cultivate extreme ownership is to study power.
What do you mean?
Because a lot of the times people don't realize how much power they give away.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
On a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, for sure.
Because when you grow older, you're not in school no more and you're in the real world, whether you have a business or you're working, you start to realize that human beings are actually very complex creatures. Society is very complex. And it is so easy to fall into little loopholes and rabbit holes where you just give your power away without even realizing it. Such as, this person has done this to me. This person has done that to me.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're allowing them, well, almost like the fact that you're embodying the idea that they can actually do something to you, you kind of embody the idea that you can be a victim.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So that's a problem with that mentality. But extreme ownership, cultivating that, it's about understanding, well, in what way am I empowering myself? In what way am I disempowering myself? And at the core of that is just understanding that reserving that power, having that power, and not giving it away looks like this. I'm responsible for all of this. I'm responsible for all of this in spite of this person, that person, in spite of my circumstances. And it's a hard message to honestly get through to yourself and embody, because the truth is, sometimes it is other people, bro. Sometimes it is.
Oh, yeah.
It is other things.
Yeah.
But that ain't the point of the message. The point of the message is just understanding and appreciating that if you look at it objectively, in order to move forward, you have to hold on to as much as you can and not give too much power away. Because if you give that power away, well, it's like, if I want to be on the same frequency or the same kind of like paradigm that's in alignment with my true desires and what I want to pursue in life, I need to understand that that's going to take a lot of energy out of me.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
And the more power I give away, the less energy I have.
Yeah, no, that I resonate with. I think it's so easy to spend a lot of time focusing on other people's energy. It's, do you know, one of the key, this, I'm going off a topic here slightly, but it's that being that people pleaser, right?
Mm.
So, and I think for so long, I can relate to this. I imagine a lot of other people can. Instead of focusing on yourself, you're pleasing other people, potentially sometimes with the aim or the idea that by pleasing them and putting them first, it will help you progress in some way, which it doesn't. It didn't for me, at least. And I think what that does, it drains you of your energy. And then I think
100%.
when you take that power back, that's a serious shift. The power of saying no.
100%.
That's a big power shift, I think.
Would you say there's a tie between low self-esteem and giving your power away, people pleasing?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Low self-esteem, guilt, all these things, they correlate to it. Yeah, without a doubt. Go on.
I find that the people who get caught in the trap of people pleasing usually also suffer very strongly from low self-esteem.
Yeah. I mean, with people pleasing, I think, yeah, that's a big topic, because there's lots of different reasons. Yes, low self-esteem, but then you go into, right, well, where does that stem from?
Yeah, it's multifaceted. It's probably not as black and white as that, but I think the main tie is, like, if I think back in all the times in my life where I've been people pleasing, it's usually a time period in my life where I felt less confident or I've had less belief in myself. So I've usually had to be saying something or doing something that's maybe misaligned with my true desires or what I truly want to do or what I truly want to say or whatever. And it just kind of like, well, I don't voice that. I don't embody that.
When you're lost, I think when you don't have that direction. And I think at that point, you're going to people please to potentially you have a fear that you're going to lose those people around you. You value the wrong people. You're putting time into the wrong people, and that's from my experience. That's when when I was in that state, I was as far away as I think I've ever been from having a purpose. I was focusing on building other people's purposes. I was building their goals. I was helping them achieve that. For me, that was down to times I fucked up, mistakes I made, and how I dealt with that. I would always say I'm not a victim. And I wasn't playing the victim, but I was massively, like that's where I was at. And I probably, to people who could see through that, which was probably way more than I thought. It was probably pretty obvious, and I think that's one of the key points when you get to, right, what is my purpose? And do you know, for me, it wasn't even, I never asked myself that question. It was someone asked me a question a few weeks ago about a process that I've just been through. And it was, well, what have you gained from this? What have you got out of it? And the first thing I said was, I have a purpose. I hadn't even thought about it before. It was just, that's what came into my head. And it was amazing when I thought about that, because I can't tell you if I've ever said to myself, I've got a purpose. I still don't fully know what that is, but I know I bring a lot more value. Whether that's me, and how I used to bring value was people pleasing. Yeah. And there was very little value in that. There was definitely very little value for me. Whereas now, being more assertive, managing my time, being disciplined every day, showing up for myself every day, that's the key for me to understanding what my purpose is. And I think I could be so far away from understanding what it is, but that's fine. Yeah. But it's these things that are going to help me get there.
Yeah. Well, I think fundamentally, the easiest statement to kind of define what your purpose is just, my purpose is to execute against my fullest potential. Because what that looks like is different for everybody, but it gives you enough room to explore. It's not suppressing your emotions. It's not suppressing your dreams, goals, and aspirations. It's encouraging you to explore those things, but within the realms of what feels right to you.
Yeah.
For one person, their fullest potential could just be making sure they wake up every day and do the best that they can to be a functioning member of society in any way that suits them. And if that's what they truly believe is their fullest potential, then they're doing exactly what they need to be doing.
That's true.
But it's something you self-determine, isn't it?
It is.
But in saying that, just linking back to the third question, do you think people can have multiple different purposes in their life? Or do you feel like it's something that you have to...
I think you can have different values. I think you can have different... No, I think it's the answer to that. I don't. I don't think you can. I think you can be taking your time to understand your purpose, but no, I don't think you can have different purposes, because I think the idea of a purpose, it's almost like your core values, which that can go into loads of different areas, loads of different projects, whatever you're working on. But no, your purpose might change over time as your life changes, as things adapt, as you adapt to life. But no, for me, where I'm at right now, I don't think... I'm still trying to work out my one purpose, let alone multiple. But no, I don't know if you can have more than one purpose.
Yeah. I think if you were to say, well, is purpose so important that if you don't define it, you go off the rails? Well, you could definitely make a real good argument for that.
Yeah, for some people.
Yeah, you could make a real good argument for that. But likewise, I think because of the use of the word in motivational speeches and in all the theatrics that come with the word, because it's used as a buzzword, it also could just be replaced with a different word that means something to you. And you could just let that run.
I think that's probably a pretty key point, which is, you're right, it's a buzzword. It's used all the time. And I think a lot of people, that's where it ends with them, which is, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
How do I, you're telling me I need to find my purpose.
If you were to like get straight to the point, it's like, why are you here, mate? Why the fuck are you here?
Yeah.
It's like, my purpose is to do this. And I think people have a fear of actually defining their purpose, because they think, if I say this, I have to then live up to it for the rest of my life. I have to live or die by it. It's like, no, mate. Like, if you say my purpose is to da-da-da-da-da, and whatever that is something really trivial, mate, who gives a fuck?
Do you know, I'd say...
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
It's just, you need autonomy and you need infrastructure in the way you see the world before you define your purpose.
Moral compass.
Yeah. I think that's important, because then you might just say things for the crack. You might just say things that don't really...
You don't truly believe in.
Yeah. Or it harms you and it harms others.
Also, people
which
see
is
through
stupid.
that. People see, when you're not being genuine, people see through that. And that was me for so long. And I think that's what built me to have that low self-esteem, was because the people that I didn't really care whether what they thought of me, they probably didn't see through the mask. The people I did care about, they saw through that shit straight away. And I felt that, even at the time, I felt that. And that probably drove me deeper into where I was at that point. But, honestly, I think right now, it's trying to be not a better person every day, but trying to be a good person every day. That's probably as base level as my purpose gets right now, which is just trying to, when I'm making a decision, trying to do the right thing. there's certain things I'm doing at the moment, you know, in aspects of my life where it's focused around being grateful, my gratitude for specific things each day, but also what has my impact been on the people I've been around that day? I think that's fundamental, at least for me, because that was something I never looked beyond myself. I never looked beyond what was I getting out of this.
Yeah.
I never did something for someone else if I didn't in some way think I could get something back for that. That was my mentality. My ego, that's what was driving me. Ego and trying to control everything. I couldn't let the control down. So that for me is a key point of my purpose. Is trying to be that good person, because I know I am, but it's so easy to derail yourself from that.
100%. I think good person is like where philosophy comes in, though, right? Because it's like
stoicism.
You're like, when you say the word good, it's like people's interpretation of what is good is like left, right, up, down. It's all over the place.
Some people's good, it's not on others.
But yeah, I think sometimes people do overcomplicate the idea of what purpose is all about. I think at its core, it's about executing against your fullest potential, whatever that looks like for you. But I also believe the process of defining your purpose is something that is unique to you. I think it's very personal to you.
Do you have to define it?
I think it's helpful to do so, just as a reminder of why you believe your existence holds a certain relevance to the people around you and to your future. But I also believe that if you get stuck in the trap of not being able to define what you believe your purpose is, that actually becomes your purpose. Because the exploration of what your purpose is now a journey.
Yeah, that's exciting. I feel a lot with that. I resonate with it. That is it, because that is the exciting part.
Yeah.
Is understanding you hold value, and you go from having goals to maybe not achieving those goals, and that can be followed by a period where you don't have much direction.
Yeah.
And then when you suddenly think, or you make some changes, not all the changes you need, but maybe you make some changes, and you get that self-belief back. That's when things start to click, and that's when the purpose comes into it. And then you're on an exciting journey of figuring out what that purpose is.
100%. Like nowadays, if someone comes up to me and they're like, I don't know what my true purpose is, I just slap them across the head and I say, look, if you don't know what if you don't know what your true purpose is, your purpose is now the journey of actually discovering it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ripping down.
Because if you genuinely believe in the idea of cultivating a sense of purpose, then that in itself is important enough to be your purpose. So,
do you think it's when you go through that?
I don't actually slap anyone across the head when they ask me that,
but you know, when you go through that point where, like we spoke about it earlier, you go through that time period where you're like, right, I want to make some changes. I'm stagnant. I'm not where I want to be. Then you go through a period that's uncomfortable, which to some degree doesn't really go away, because the more you go out your comfort zone, the more uncomfortable you get. But you get used to it, and it becomes part of your day-to-day. But once you get beyond that point of sort of becoming okay with that, accepting of the journey, accepting of what you need to do to take each step, even just the next step, then you get to a point where you're like, right. At least, so actually, I got to a point a few weeks ago where, for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't have. There was no chaos for me. Right? It was life was good. It was calm. that threw me massively.
Yeah,
Because
I remember you were saying like
Yeah,
the
cool
fact that
job.
there was no chaos
yeah.
meant that you needed to almost like embrace the order.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So like it's almost like when you're so used to something toxic, let's say, when you come across something that isn't, you don't know how to fully embrace it.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, and that's a weird dynamic. I feel like more times than not that happens like to like a lot of people when they start to explore themselves, or like even if you're just on like any sort of like self-improvement journey. I think that's a reason why it's so lonely as well, because like when you start to improve yourself, you start to make changes to your life, make changes to your routine, make changes to you know, how you walk, how you talk, all of these things. It starts to become really, really lonely because you're basically turning your back on the essence of who you have been.
You kill that person.
Yeah, for a very long time. So, yeah, it's a very lonely journey, self-improvement.
It is lonely. But I think it's a lot, that loneliness is different to the loneliness you feel when you're at the other point.
Yeah.
Because I've felt that loneliness, that hurts. That hurts when you're alone and you're not where you want to be and you've got no idea where you want to be, or you haven't even thought about how you're going to get there. That loneliness hurts. This loneliness, when you're going through this type of positive journey, I think it's different.
Yeah.
You accept it. You have to accept it.
It's a sense of loneliness that you're willing to tolerate, essentially.
You know where you're going.
Yeah.
You might, okay, this might be how it is now. You might have cut a lot of people out of your life. You most definitely will have if you're looking to make a lot of changes. But also a lot of people come into your life.
Yeah.
Not as many, nowhere near as many, but they bring a lot more value. And also I think you value your time more. So I think that loneliness is, do you know what? I cherish those moments.
It's like sharks swim with sharks, right?
100%.
You know what I mean? The moment you decide you want to be a shark, it's like, oh shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're competing with sharks now. That's different as well.
Yeah. So you almost have like no choice but to step your game up and accept that if
Power of 5.
Yeah, if some loneliness comes with that, or a feeling of loneliness comes with that, I kind of need to embrace it. I think you do have to find some sort of balance, because sometimes things are just as they are based on our assumptions. So if you assume you can't build a life of fulfillment and success and all of these things and achieve all of these things whilst also having deep, meaningful relationships with people, and you can't put those two things in one sentence, then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You go on to achieve everything that you wanted to achieve anyways, but because you had this very strong assumption or idea in your mind that you couldn't do both things at the same time, that's literally what ends up happening. It's like I was saying to you the other day about like checking your blind spots. Because one of our blind spots when we do have such a strong focus on living out our purpose is we forget that there is other things to do in life, and there is other things to experience, and it might not always be directly aligned with your purpose. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because I mean, that sums up a lot of me in the last 6 months. You know, I changed everything, and I tried to change it, or had to change it really quickly, just night and day, and then there was, and still is, a real adjustment, which is what is important to me. What is my new life? What am I doing? Certain parts of it came really easy. My work, putting a lot of time into fitness, that gave me that discipline, that gave me that structure. But everything else, that it took a long time to work out. to establish and to get comfortable with again, because a lot of it was the same, but suddenly it was completely different. So that's a lot of that I'm still working out.
Yeah.
And that's part of the process, and being content with that as well. That's a big thing. That it takes time, and yeah, like you say, checking your blind spots. That's something which I would never do. You said it earlier, run away. That's what I would do. That was how I would handle these things. I could tell something was making me uncomfortable, and I would retreat. Instead of now, you've got to face life head on. That's so hard, you know. You don't
100%.
to do that every day is so tough.
100%.
So tough to go and face whatever you really don't want to. But the funny thing is, every time you do that, it is nowhere near as bad as you pictured it being in your head. And you don't feel anywhere near as bad as you did when you can't sleep at night thinking about it in your head. It's never that bad. Maybe sometimes it is, but very, very rarely. And that's such a mental thing, really, isn't it? If you think about it, we spend so long worrying about situations in our heads, and they're never as bad as you think they're going to be, as long as you face them head on. If you leave them, then they might get that bad. But if you face it head on, they don't.
100%. 100%. And I suppose that kind of ties back into like discipline as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I just feel like a lot of the times people struggle with cultivating discipline.
Oh, it's not easy.
Yeah. It's probably one of the hardest things you'll probably do.
The steps to achieve it is easy. Like what you need to do isn't difficult, but it's the consistency to do it. That's not easy. It gets easy.
I always say discipline isn't something you cultivate, but it's something you emulate. Because really, you're trying to model somebody else's success based on what it is you're trying to pursue. So if somebody eats really well, trains really hard, and you wish you did those things consistently, you could reinvent the wheel and try to do it your way. But it might make things much more challenging.
9 times out of 10 it will. And that's from my experience.
So you just have to emulate the success that somebody else has had. But I think that's where you have to be very careful, because who you emulate and what you emulate. If you go into that like, oh yeah, I'll just do this. Oh yeah, I'll just do that. Personalization is usually a very big predetermining factor for somebody actually being able to do something successfully when it comes to discipline. Because if your journey isn't personalized to you, then who and what are you emulating?
Yeah, I think that's key. I think when you're at a point, what are you trying to be disciplined for? I think for a lot of people, it's you're trying to get to a certain point, or you're sick of where you're at. That I think is probably that's where it was for me. I couldn't keep going how I was. I was sick of it. I had to get to that point. I had to get to that point where I was prepared.
Do you think that's when people find their true purpose? When they're sick?
That's when I started to find mine. I didn't know it at the time, but 100%. When I was at a point where I was so hopeless, and the key point was I became willing. I finally became willing to what do I need to do? Just tell me what I need to do. And when I got to that point, that was when it clicked. Now it's not like me saying, oh, suddenly it all clicked overnight and that was it. Suddenly everything was there and I was able to achieve all I wanted. I'm nowhere near that. But for the first time in my life, have been consistently disciplined for 6 months. And the changes I've seen have been huge in that time period.
Do you feel like your self-esteem played a role in that?
Yes, I think.
Because from my experience, discovering what I believe to be my true sense of purpose happened when I cultivated high self-esteem.
Yeah. But
because when it's low self-esteem, you're like, you're still doubting yourself. You're still kind of like unsure.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I still doubted myself at the initial bit because I had a lot of guilt to deal with.
Mm.
But one thing I never lost was I never lost my self-confidence. I might not have had the belief, but I've
Mm.
always felt that I can achieve a lot, a great deal. But what changed for me was for the first time is I believed I could do what I said I was going to do. And do you know what? It was being honest. It wasn't bullshitting.
Yeah.
Because that's how I got into such a point of bullshitting in every aspect of my life with everyone and everything. It was, and that's tiring.
It is.
That's
It's exhausting.
Yeah. So I think when that left, that just made me so much lighter. And I think that was pretty profound. And that gave me that initial push because I had all this baggage on me. I was trying to keep up with all these different things I was trying to play, all these different roles I was trying to play. And you can't consistently go on like that. You'll break at some point, and I broke massively.
Yeah.
But then that rebuild was fucking exciting. It is still fucking exciting. Like that's what gets me excited. That's what helps me throw myself out of bed at 5 a.m. every day now. Like I always used to tell people I go up at 5 a.m. No, I didn't. I get up whenever I decide to stop snoozing the alarm. But I tell everyone I go up at 5 a.m. I tell everyone I've had my electrolytes, I've drunk my 500 ml of water, I've done my gratitude, I've meditated in the morning. I tell everyone I did that, but I didn't. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of people, and when you do that, you start lying to yourself. So you believe your lies.
Oh yeah.
So then you get confused because I'm doing everything right, but you're not. You're not. You're doing 50% of it. And that's not enough, from my experience anyway.
Yeah, 100%. So what would be your last piece of advice if you were to say to somebody, this is how you cultivate a true sense of your purpose? And I know it's obviously a really difficult question to answer, but I thought, what better way of kind of like summarizing everything we've discussed than that, really, to kind of pinpoint what it would look like to cultivate a true sense of purpose for yourself so that you could move forward in your life in a way that's conducive to what you truly want for yourself. I think that's the most important thing. You want to move forwards, but you want to move forwards in a way that's conducive to what you truly desire out of life. So
I think all the things in your head where you're wondering if you're doing things wrong, or you're wondering if you're pushing it as hard as you can. Be honest with yourself about them, because at least for me, when I was honest with myself, I wasn't pushing myself as hard as I could. I wasn't actually being as good of a person as I could have been. I wasn't actually listening to people's advice. The people's advice I was listening to was definitely not the right people, but it's what I wanted to hear. So I took that advice. So I think being honest, marginal gains, just try and do some things consistently at the start. Because if you're going for where I was, which was a point so far away from where I wanted to be, you have to take small wins, whether it's just getting a consistent sleep, just going to bed that little bit earlier, and just getting up earlier than people. That's a win.
yeah,
When you get up and you leave the house and everyone else is still asleep, I challenge any man or woman to not. That gives you a bit of purpose. You think, right, I'm already off to a head start today. So that gives you a little bit more self-worth.
Yeah. I always think of it this way, like people beat themselves up when they're inconsistent, but you consistently wake up every day.
Yeah, I like that.
So that's something that you can use as a reminder to yourself, really, that you are consistent in something. So your demons haven't fully won, really. If every day you wake up, it's like whatever demons you're dealing with, they can't be that effective because you're still in this bitch. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
So that's one way of looking at it.
No, I agree. And the other reality is, when things are going really well for you, there's a high chance that you're going to get some curveballs. That's the reality of life. So I think set your expectations. Set your expectations right. If you go into a situation with too high of expectation, you're letting yourself open. You're leaving yourself open to feeling let down, to getting emotional, which isn't a bad thing, but you could completely prevent that by managing your expectations. So if you're looking to make change, you're looking to really go up another level, realize that it's going to be a process.
Yeah.
It's going to take time. There's going to be very marginal gains. You will go through periods of time where you don't see any change. At some point. So I was speaking to someone the other day where we were talking about a specific topic, and it was 3 months ago. I thought I'd got that on lock. I knew all I need to know about that. Move forward 3 months, and I was saying to the same person, I know less now than I did 3 months ago. Because the more I learned and the more I understood where I was at, I realized I had so much more to learn and so much further to go.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
Which is why you have to
enjoy
appreciate
the process.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why you have to appreciate where you are. And
so it's okay where you are. Wherever you are, that's fine. You got to accept that. Because if you're not comfortable with that, then you're falling at the first hurdle. Because that's where you're at. Whether you like it or not, that's where you're at.
Yeah.
So accept that. Learn to love it. And start to put something in place to move forward. Just can you see the next step? Okay? You can. Take that.
Exactly. But yeah, you just can't be too hard on yourself because...
Definitely not. And people are. I am. We all are. It doesn't serve a purpose. It doesn't. It does to a point, but in most aspects of life, give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of shit going on. As long as you're doing some things right, as long as you're trying to be a slightly better person, that's a platform to build on.
100%. 100%. But yeah, man, I think that's probably a good way of wrapping up the episode, isn't it?
That's it.
But yeah.
Number 1 done.